Hey guys, been a while since I uploaded on this channel, but first of all, I hope you guys had a wonderful holiday. Obviously, I celebrated Christmas with my family. I'm not in my office. I am actually in my family's home in NorCal, hanging out with my uncles and aunts that live here. I asked you guys over on YouTube to ask me some questions. I thought, maybe it'd be cool to answer some. I've done Q&As before, but it kind of took the idea from Mr. Mizkiff, and I thought, hey, it'd be kind of cool to answer like one of these at a time, like a video at a time, and kind of like a breakdown on some serious questions. A very common question that I got from a lot of these had a lot to do with conventions, and I feel like it would make a really good video to just talk about conventions in general. So let's read out a few of them. What did you miss most about conventions, and what should we expect coming back to these indoor events after so long? The things that I missed about conventions is mostly just seeing people and meeting new people. One of the greatest things about conventions for me is like I created a lot of connections, a lot with some of my closest friends are through conventions. Like for example, like PAX East, which is not an anime convention, it's a gaming convention. I met other YouTubers who are my friends through that. So it's people who I've met on the internet that I got to meet them personally, to put a face behind that screen that we usually get. So I feel like that was one thing that I missed most about conventions, and of course meeting people who watched my content. Meeting you guys was really, really great. What should we expect coming back to these indoor events? To be honest, not a lot of people seem to care. It's kind of like, obviously you can see that the pandemic has definitely shifted the tides with how conventions are being run, especially like longer lines, because we have to wait to get checked if we're vaccinated or not. I feel like at a point there is going to be a cap on how many people they're going to allow in the conventions to where tickets sell out, kind of like Comic-Con. But other than that, I feel like that's pretty much the main thing. Other than that, I feel like obviously we're seeing a ton more people wear masks, which is, I think that's great. But at the same time, I feel like there is going to be a mixture of people who really disagree with that, don't want to get vaccinated, so on and so forth. In a way, it's kind of scary, feels not safe, but I know people think it's okay, but we can't necessarily say it's okay because nothing has happened to us. I think we should put it into the perspective that things have happened to other people. Just because nothing has happened to us doesn't mean that it's not happening anywhere else. So it's better to play it safe, in my personal opinion, and get vaccinated if you can. When you go to a convention, what is usually the first booth that you go for? I think it varies with different conventions. Usually the booths that I usually go to, and I say plural, is usually a sponsor, like one of my sponsors, if it's there, If their booths aren't there, I usually just walk around. Honestly, like I don't really have a clear goal in mind when it comes to convention booths now, because after going to so many, they become a little bit repetitive, but sometimes there's something new that gets brought to the table. In that regard, I usually go to clothing brands because I always like to see anime-inspired clothing, which kind of inspired the series Anime Drip. Ulysses says, do you feel conventions changed from when you started to go versus now, like in feel of the crowd and presentation? In terms of presentation, no, it's about the same. Obviously there's some rules and regulations due to the pandemic that has to happen, but there is definitely a different feel for the crowd. It's so interesting because obviously we haven't really been to a con in like almost 2 years, and going back to it, the crowd is different in the sense of like the cosplayers that I used to like do wobbles with, and cosplayers that I used to talk to, are completely different to the cosplayers that we see now. There's a new wave of cosplayers, which is really cool, a new wave of anime fans due to the pandemic and people finding interest into cosplaying because of TikTok, being stuck at home, finding interest in certain things. I think there is now a new wave of anime fans and cosplayers, which is a great thing. It's a great thing to see the floodgates open and meeting so many new people who are interested. But also at the same time, it forces me to kind of mingle and meet with more people, but that's a good thing as well. I'm very introverted, I'm very shy. It may not seem like it on camera, but most of the time I'm pretty shy to meet new people. But yeah, that's mostly like the convention questions that I had now. Now, one thing that people ask is like whether if it's safe or not. I think that's dependent on how the staff runs the convention, and it's also dependent on us as attendees, especially with the rise of tests showing positive. I think it's very, we don't know what's going to happen, especially since I have like cons lined up that I'm attending, press, or even guesting at. It makes me a little nervous to see what's going to come. But from what, at least how I'm feeling, is if we continue to get our vaccines, continuously test to see if we're okay or not, I think eventually cons will come back at full force. But of course, there's going to be rules and regulations that are going to come with going to conventions, because it's dangerous, it's scary. Like I said, just because nothing has happened to us doesn't mean that something is not happening to someone else that has either attended or even hasn't attended. Someone is being affected. Just because we're not doesn't mean they aren't. So all I can say, guys, is be safe. Hopefully I'll see you guys at the conventions that I'll be attending next year. There's a few guest lines up that I'm excited for, and yeah, be safe, guys. Happy holidays.